just one kiss. Her family forced her to wed her sister's comatose millionaire fiancé. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Marry me, he said calmly, sliding a sleek contract across the marble table. His voice was even, almost bored, like he was negotiating a business merger, not a marriage. Think of it as a partnership, a deal. The rain outside tapped against the glass walls of the penthouse, steady and cold. The city lights blurred in the storm, and across from him sat Ava Collins, her thrift store coat still damp from the downpour. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the man in front of her, Nicholas Ward, the youngest billionaire in Manhattan, known for his icy composure and impossible standards. "You cannot be serious," she whispered, her fingers tightening around the cup of untouched coffee. Nicholas leaned back in his chair, perfectly unshaken. "I am. My grandfather's will requires me to be married by the end of this quarter, or the board takes full control of Ward Enterprises. I need a wife for exactly 6 months. After that, you will be free, and you will receive $200,000. Her throat went dry. $200,000. The exact amount her mother needed for the surgery that insurance refused to cover. "Why me?" Ava finally asked, her voice cracking slightly. Nicholas studied her quietly, his gray eyes sharp yet unreadable. "Because you do not belong to this world. You will not fall in love with me, and you will not pretend to. You will simply sign, show up when required, and disappear when it ends." Ava let out a shaky laugh, half in disbelief, half in fear. "That is cold, even for a businessman." He did not flinch. "I am not here to be warm, Miss Collins. I am here to win." She looked down at the contract again, typed lines, numbered clauses, signatures waiting in blank ink. "Rule number 1, he said, his tone clipped. "You do not speak about our arrangement to anyone. Rule number 2, we attend 5 public events together. Rule number 3, no real intimacy. This is business, not romance." He pushed a black velvet box across the table. Inside was a diamond ring, minimal, elegant, heavy with meaning. "Wear this whenever you are with me," he added. "It will make the illusion believable." Ava hesitated. The clock ticked softly between them. Her mind flashed through hospital corridors, medical bills, her mother's pale smile. Pride screamed no, but desperation whispered yes. She picked up the pen with trembling fingers. "Fine," she said quietly. "You have yourself a wife." Nicholas nodded once, expression unreadable. "Our wedding is tomorrow morning, Ward Tower, 10 a.m. sharp." As he stood, the storm outside broke harder, thunder echoing through the skyline. He placed the ring box in front of her, the silver band catching the light like a promise and a prison. Ava sat frozen long after he left. The paper trembled in her hands, her signature still glistening wet with ink. The smell of rain and espresso filled the empty cafe, and somewhere deep inside, she felt a small piece of herself crack. Outside, the storm swallowed the city whole. She pressed the ring box against her chest and whispered, "Mom, I am doing this for you." Tomorrow, she would step into a world built on lies, glass, and diamonds. Tomorrow, she would marry a man who believed hearts could be bought and vows could be traded like currency. And yet, something in his eyes, something almost human, lingered in her mind long after he was gone. If you were in her place, would you sign that contract to save someone you love? Now, let us return to Ava Collins, the girl who just agreed to marry a billionaire for money without realizing that this deal would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, the sky over Manhattan was still gray, heavy with rain. Ava Collins stood in front of the mirror inside a marble dressing room on the top floor of Ward Tower. Her reflection looked like a stranger white dress, trembling hands, eyes swollen from a sleepless night. The silk fabric shimmered under the pale morning light, elegant and expensive, yet she felt none of its beauty belonged to her. A knock on the door broke her thoughts. "It is time," said a soft voice. A middle-aged woman, one of Nicholas's assistants, stepped inside holding a bouquet of pale roses. "Mr. Ward is waiting downstairs." Ava forced a nod, her throat too tight to speak. As she walked down the corridor, her footsteps echoed against the marble, each one heavier than the last. The elevator doors opened to the private floor where Nicholas stood beside a justice of the peace. No guests, no music, only the hum of fluorescent light and the faint rumble of thunder outside. Nicholas turned as she entered. He was dressed in a black suit that looked tailored to perfection, his expression unreadable. "You look appropriate," he said finally. His tone was polite, distant, almost mechanical. Ava swallowed the sting in her chest. "Let us get this over with." The ceremony lasted less than 5 minutes. The officiant's words blurred in her ears. When it was time to exchange rings, Nicholas slid the diamond band onto her finger with practiced precision, his skin cool against hers. She repeated the motion, her hands shaking as she placed the matching ring on his. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The words felt surreal, like a contract sealed, not a vow spoken. Nicholas gave a single nod to the officiant, then turned back to her. "Congratulations, Mrs. Ward. Your new life begins today." He offered his arm. She hesitated, then took it. Cameras flashed outside as they stepped through the glass doors into a crowd of reporters. He tightened his grip slightly, whispering without looking at her, "Smile, they are watching." Ava forced a small smile, pretending for the lenses that this union was built on love, not survival. Journalists shouted questions, but Nicholas guided her into the waiting car with calm authority. The door closed, and silence fell. Inside the sleek black limousine, city lights streaked across the tinted glass. Ava sat stiffly beside him, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. "You did not tell me there would be press," she said quietly. "It was necessary," Nicholas replied. "A public marriage looks authentic. It will keep the board satisfied." "So I am part of your strategy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at her, his tone sharp but not cruel. "You agreed to the deal, Ava. Do not act surprised when it feels like business." She turned her face toward the window, hiding the tears she refused to let fall. Outside, the rain softened, streaking down the glass like silver threads. Somewhere below, the world kept moving cars, people, life, but for Ava, time had stopped inside this car. Nicholas finally spoke again, quieter this time. "You will move into Ward Tower tonight. A room has been arranged for you on the 39th floor. We will attend a corporate dinner this weekend. Be ready." Ava nodded silently. She was his wife now, at least on paper. And as the car drove deeper into the city, she realized that she had stepped into a world that obeyed his rules, where every glance, every word, every breath might be part of the contract. Still, beneath his controlled tone, something flickered in his voice, something human, almost uncertain. Ava caught it for a brief second before it vanished, leaving only the man of steel beside her. Outside, lightning split the clouds, and for the first time since signing her name, Ava wondered if the deal she made to save her mother's life would end up costing her own heart. The following evening, Ava Collins stood before the towering glass windows of her new apartment inside Ward Tower. The city glittered below her like a field of broken stars. The space was vast and sterile white marble floors, chrome fixtures, no trace of warmth. She ran her fingers along the edge of a leather sofa, her reflection stretching thin across the polished surface. Everything looked perfect, expensive, and completely lifeless. A soft chime sounded as the elevator opened behind her. She turned to see Nicholas Ward stepping inside, his tie loosened, his jacket draped casually over one arm. "I see you found the wardrobe," he said, glancing at the neatly hung dresses arranged by color inside her closet. "My assistant stocked everything you might need. You will be representing my name now, so presentation matters." Ava met his eyes, her tone even. "You think a new wardrobe can make me fit into your world?" He raised an eyebrow. "It will help." Then, with that same unreadable calm, he placed a thin folder on the coffee table. "These are the rules we discussed. Review them, sign where indicated, and return the copy to me by morning." Ava picked it up, scanning the printed lines. Confidentiality, joint appearances, separate bedrooms. Clause after clause spelling out exactly how she was supposed to behave. Near the end, one paragraph stood out. "Either party may terminate the agreement with written notice if emotional attachment interferes with the contract's purpose." She looked up sharply. "So, if either of us starts feeling anything real, we are required to end it?" Nicholas met her gaze without flinching. That will not be a problem. Her chest tightened. You are certain of that? He adjusted his cufflinks, his voice clipped. I am. Ava bit back a retort. Instead, she turned away, walking toward the tall window again. The reflection showed two strangers standing in the same room, her in a borrowed dress, him in control of every inch of his world. I have arranged for a stylist to meet you tomorrow, Nicholas continued, his tone purely practical. She will prepare you for the board dinner this weekend. It is essential that you make a good impression. The board members respect appearances more than honesty. Good to know, she murmured, staring at the storm clouds rolling over the skyline. For a moment, silence filled the space between them, broken only by the hum of the city. Then he spoke again, quieter. You do not have to be afraid of me, Ava. This arrangement will run smoothly if you remember what it is. She turned, her voice low but steady. A transaction. He nodded once. Exactly. He left a moment later, the soft click of the door echoing like a full stop at the end of a sentence. Ava stood alone, the contract still open in her hands. She read the line about no emotional interference again, and something inside her ached not because she wanted love from him, but because of how final it sounded. Like a wall that had already been built before she even stepped through the door. That night, she wandered through the apartment, unable to sleep. The lights of the city flickered against the glass as rain began to fall again. Somewhere in the penthouse above, Nicholas was probably working, surrounded by numbers and strategy, untouched by the storm. She poured herself a glass of water and sat by the window, whispering softly, Mom, I hope this is worth it. The next morning came with sunlight, sharp and cold. A woman named Lydia arrived with racks of clothing and trays of jewelry. She spoke quickly, efficiently, pinning fabric and holding up shoes. Mr. Ward prefers neutral tones for his events, white, black, navy, nothing loud. Ava smiled faintly. He would. By the end of the fitting, she felt more like an exhibit than a person. Lydia left, promising to return with final adjustments. Ava changed back into her own clothes, the only reminder of her real life. That evening, as she was making tea, a knock sounded on the door. When she opened it, Nicholas stood there again, this time without his usual formality. His sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly tousled. We need to rehearse, he said simply. Rehearse what? Our story, how we met, how long we dated, the board will ask. She folded her arms. You have an entire PR team, Nicholas. Why do you need me to lie with you? He looked at her, and for a split second, something like exhaustion flickered in his eyes. Because lies sound truer when both people believe them. The words hung between them. They spent the next hour building the illusion, first meeting at a charity gala, late-night coffee runs, a quiet proposal in Central Park. Ava played along, her sarcasm sharp, his answers colder than the air between them. But once, while describing the proposal, he hesitated, looking at her a beat too long. What? She asked. Nothing, he said, clearing his throat. You just make it sound real. She smiled faintly. Maybe I am better at pretending than you think. When he left, the apartment felt heavier than before. The contract on the table glowed faintly under the lamp, her untouched signature still waiting. Ava sat down, pen in hand, and whispered, no feelings, no mistakes. Then she signed her name with a quiet breath, sealing the deal that would soon test every rule they had written. 2 nights later, the city was alive with gold lights and champagne laughter. Inside the ballroom of the Langford Hotel, the elite of Manhattan gathered for the Ward Enterprises charity gala. Cameras flashed, strings hummed softly, and diamonds sparkled like frost on every wrist. Ava Collins stood near the grand staircase, her gown a smooth line of ivory silk that shimmered under the chandeliers. Every detail had been chosen by Nicholas's team, her jewelry, her hair, even the shade of lipstick that matched the Ward family brand. She felt like a mannequin on display. Across the room, Nicholas Ward was surrounded by shareholders and reporters. He looked completely in control, confident and detached, his smile precise, his posture perfect. Yet when his eyes found Ava, something in his expression shifted, barely visible, but real. He excused himself from the crowd and walked toward her. You are doing well, he said quietly, offering his arm. I am surviving, she replied under her breath. He gave the faintest smile. That is enough. Oh. As they moved through the crowd together, Ava felt dozens of eyes follow them. Every handshake, Every polite nod had to look genuine. Nicholas leaned closer to whisper, "Remember to laugh when they mention Paris. It makes it seem like we have shared memories." "Do we have any?" she asked softly. He hesitated before answering. "We will pretend we do." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and rehearsed small talk. Ava smiled until her cheeks hurt. But when a reporter suddenly turned toward her and asked, "Mrs. Ward, how did you two meet?" her pulse spiked. Nicholas's gaze caught hers for a split second, a silent cue. She inhaled and answered with steady calm. "At a charity event last spring. He was auctioning art for a children's foundation. He spilled his drink on me." Laughter rippled through the circle. Nicholas added smoothly, "I had to buy the painting to make it up to her. A terrible investment, but worth it." The crowd laughed again, and the reporter scribbled notes. When the group moved on, Nicholas looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "That was quick thinking." "I learned from the best," Ava replied. "You lie beautifully." He did not respond, but she noticed the corner of his mouth twitch almost a smile. Later that night, when the music softened and couples began to dance, Nicholas extended his hand. "We should at least look like newlyweds," he said. Ava hesitated, then took his hand. His palm was warm, his touch firm yet careful. As they moved together under the golden light, the world seemed to quiet around them. For the first time, the act felt less like a performance and more like a moment neither of them expected. "You dance better than I thought," she said softly. He looked down at her, his voice low. "I was trained to be good at everything that requires control." And are you always in control?" He met her eyes for a second too long. "Until now." The song ended, and the spell broke. Applause filled the room. Nicholas released her hand, his expression once again unreadable. "We should leave before anyone notices we stayed too long." Outside, the night air was cool and heavy with mist. As the car door closed behind them, silence settled once more. Ava turned to the window, her heart still racing from the dance. Nicholas finally spoke, his tone quiet but edged with something new. "You handled tonight better than I expected. I had a good teacher," she said, meeting his eyes. He looked away first. "Do not mistake this for anything more than what it is." "I would not dare," she replied. But when she looked down at her hand, the one that had just held his, her fingers were still trembling. In that moment, Ava realized that pretending to be a wife was far more dangerous than she had imagined. Because somewhere between the rules and the lies, her heart had started to forget that it was only a contract. The morning after the gala, the front pages were covered with photographs of Nicholas Ward and Ava Collins. Every headline carried the same words, "The Ice King finally smiles." The press called it the marriage that thawed Manhattan's most ruthless billionaire. Ava scrolled through the articles with a knot in her stomach. Every smile they captured was staged, every moment rehearsed. Yet, the image looked real. She wondered if Nicholas had seen them, if he felt the same strange pull that kept her awake long after the gala had ended. When she stepped into the private dining room of Ward Tower, he was already there. His breakfast untouched, his expression unreadable as ever. He slid a newspaper toward her. "Good work," he said. "You handled last night perfectly." The board was impressed. She folded her hands to hide the slight tremor in her fingers. "Then the act is working." He studied her for a moment. "You sound disappointed. I just thought real happiness might look a little less scripted." For the first time, his composure cracked just a flicker of something human behind his calm. "Do not mistake photographs for truth, Mrs. Ward. People only see what they want to believe." Before she could reply, the door opened. A woman in a red dress walked in without knocking. Clara Walsh, the company's head of public relations, and Nicholas's rumored former girlfriend. She smiled, the kind that looked more like a challenge than a greeting. "Nicholas, everyone is talking about last night. You made quite a statement." Her gaze slid to Ava. "And you must be the miracle who changed him." Ava forced a polite smile. "I am just his wife." "Of course," Clara said, her tone dripping with sweetness. "Though I wonder how long that will last." Nicholas's voice cut through the tension. "Clara, that is enough." But the damage was done. Ava could feel the sting in her chest as Clara's heels clicked away down the hall. She stood to leave, needing air. Nicholas reached for her wrist, his grip firm but not harsh. "Ignore her. She thrives on drama. She seemed very sure she knew you." He released her hand. "It was years ago. It meant nothing." Ava met his eyes. "Then why did it still hurt to hear it?" He said nothing. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unspoken. Later that evening, they attended a board dinner together, another stage, another performance. The room was filled with polished laughter and clinking glasses. Halfway through the night, one of the older shareholders leaned toward Ava and said, "You have changed him, you know. He used to be all numbers and no heart." She smiled faintly. Maybe he just needed a reminder that hearts exist. Nicholas looked at her across the table, his jaw tightening, his eyes softer than before. He raised his glass slightly, a silent acknowledgement. When the dinner ended, they left together. In the elevator, the air between them felt charged, almost fragile. Ava turned toward him, her voice quiet. "You do not have to keep pretending when it is just us." He looked down at her, searching her face. "Maybe pretending is safer." Safer for who?" she asked. He did not answer, but his hand brushed hers briefly before he stepped back. The doors opened, and he walked out without another word. Ava stood there alone as the elevator doors closed, her heart beating hard against her ribs. Somewhere between the lies, the public smiles, and the quiet moments that were never supposed to matter, something had begun to shift, something neither of them could control. She pressed her palm against the cool glass wall, her reflection staring back like a stranger in a borrowed life. For the first time since signing the contract, Ava began to realize the truth. This was not just a performance anymore. This was the beginning of something real, and it terrified her more than any deal Nicholas Ward could ever make. The following week brought a different kind of silence to Ward Tower. The tabloids had moved on, but inside the penthouse, every word between Ava Collins and Nicholas Ward felt heavy with everything they were not saying. They still ate breakfast at the same table, attended the same meetings, smiled for the same cameras, but the act no longer felt like pretending. Late one night, Ava found him on the rooftop terrace. The city stretched below them, a constellation of restless lights. Nicholas stood near the edge, his hands in his pockets, his tie loosened, his expression distant. For the first time, he looked tired, like the weight of control he carried every day had finally begun to crack. "You should be asleep," he said without turning around. "I could say the same to you," she replied softly. "You live in this building, but I am not sure you ever rest." He gave a small, humorless smile. "Rest is a luxury I cannot afford." Ava stepped closer, the wind catching her hair. "You built an empire, Nicholas. What could possibly keep you awake?" His jaw tensed. "Legacy, responsibility, the fear that I will turn into the kind of man my father was." She hesitated. "What was he like?" He looked out at the skyline for a long time before answering. "Cold, brilliant, detached. He loved power more than people. And the more I succeed, the more I see him in the mirror." Ava's voice softened. "Maybe that is why you are fighting so hard to prove you are not him." Nicholas finally turned toward her. "You think I am capable of being different?" "I think everyone is capable of change," she said. "Even you." He studied her for a moment, the tension in his face fading. "You are not what I expected, Ava. You do not flinch when I am difficult. You do not chase money or attention. You just stay." She looked down, her heart tightening. "That was part of the deal, remember? I stay for 6 months. He stepped closer. "Yes, but you are the first person who makes it feel like 6 months might not be enough." The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Ava's breath caught, and for a brief second, the noise of the city faded away. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment. "We should not do this. It is against the contract." Nicholas gave a quiet laugh. "So now you believe in the contract?" "It is the only thing keeping us from losing ourselves," she whispered. He said nothing, only watching her with an expression that revealed more than words ever could. The next day, their routine continued as if nothing had changed, but something unspoken lingered in every glance. During a lunch meeting with investors, Nicholas caught Ava's eyes across the table. A subtle smile curved his lips before he turned back to business. It was small, almost invisible, but it made her heart skip. That evening, as they returned home, a sudden storm broke over the city. They stepped into the elevator, water dripping from their coats, the thunder echoing above. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Nicholas met her gaze in the mirrored wall. "Do you ever regret signing it?" Ava hesitated. "Sometimes, but not for the reasons you think." "What reasons, then?" "Because I cannot tell where the act ends anymore." For the first time, he did not look away. "Neither can I." The elevator doors opened, and neither of them moved. Rain streaked down the glass behind them, and in that moment, everything that had been cold between them began to melt. But before either of them could speak, Nicholas's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened instantly. Without a word, he answered and stepped away. His voice dropped low, sharp, and controlled again. Ava stood there in the hallway, her heart still racing. Whatever softness she had seen in him seconds ago was gone. And somewhere deep inside, she realized the truth. Nicholas Ward was a man built on secrets, and the next one he kept might be the one that destroyed everything between them. 2 days later, the tension that had been quietly building finally broke. Ava Collins woke to the sound of her phone vibrating against the nightstand. A dozen missed calls from an unknown number, and then one message that made her blood run cold. A photo of her and Nicholas on the rooftop, his hand brushing her cheek. Beneath it, a caption, "Ward Enterprises marriage hoax exclusive inside source claims it is all fake." She ran into the living room just as Nicholas came through the door, still in his suit, his expression stormy. "You saw it," he said flatly. Ava held up her phone. "It is everywhere, Nicholas. They know." His jaw tightened. "I will handle it." "Handle it? How? The entire city thinks our marriage is a scam. They are calling me a liar, a gold digger. This is my face on every gossip site." He took a step closer, his voice low but sharp. "I said I will handle it." "Then tell me the truth," she demanded. "Who leaked it?" He looked away, the muscle in his jaw ticking. "Someone on the inside. Maybe Clara. Maybe one of the board members." "So you do not know," she said bitterly. "Or you do and you are protecting them." Nicholas's silence was answer enough. She backed away, shaking her head. "You promised this would be controlled. You promised no one would get hurt." "I did not expect you to care about the headlines," he snapped. "That is because you never expected me to feel anything at all," she shot back. "Not fear, not shame, not love." The last word slipped out before she could stop it. For a moment, the air between them went still. Nicholas's expression changed. Something flickered across his eyes, a mix of shock and something softer he could not hide fast enough. He took a breath, but before he could speak, the door opened. Clara Walsh stood there, her tones sweet and venomous all at once. "I warned you, Nicholas. Lies always find their way out." She turned to Ava. "You should know, dear, this was never about you. The board wanted proof. I just gave it to them." Ava's voice trembled. "You leaked it?" Clara smiled. "You made it too easy. The world loves a scandal." Nicholas stepped forward, his voice cold as steel. "Get out, Clara." But she only smirked. "Fix it if you can." Then she left, her heels clicking down the marble hallway. Ava looked at Nicholas, betrayal burning in her chest. "She had access because of you. You let her stay close." He met her eyes, the weight of guilt unmistakable. "I made a mistake." "You made me one," she whispered, and before he could stop her, she turned and walked out. The elevator doors closed behind her, leaving Nicholas standing alone in the echo of everything he had broken. For the first time in his life, the man who controlled everything realized there was one thing he could not command: her heart. Rain poured over the city again, just like the night it all began. Ava Collins stood outside Ward Tower with an umbrella in her hand, staring up at the glowing logo that once meant security and sacrifice. Now it felt like a cage. Her phone kept ringing, reporters shouting her name from across the street. She ignored them all. The contract she had signed to save her mother's life had turned into the headline that ruined her own. She disappeared for 2 days. No calls, no messages, only silence. Inside his office on the top floor, Nicholas Ward worked without rest, eyes red from sleepless nights. Every news outlet carried the same story: fake marriage, corporate deception, investor scandal. His empire was bleeding millions by the hour, but none of it mattered as much as the empty chair across from him. On the third morning, his assistant entered quietly. "Sir, she sent this." She placed a plain envelope on his desk. Inside was the wedding ring he had given Ava, and a single note written in her neat handwriting: "I kept my end of the deal. Now set me free." Nicholas stared at it for a long time before whispering, "No, not like this." That afternoon, he called an emergency press conference. Cameras filled the atrium of Ward Enterprises. Journalists buzzed, waiting for a statement. When Nicholas stepped onto the stage, there was no trace of his usual armor. He looked human, raw, and heartbreakingly honest. "I will not deny what has been said," he began. "Our marriage began as a business contract. That much is true, but what you do not know is that she did not marry me for money. She did it to save someone she loved. And somewhere along the way, She saved me too, the crowd murmured, flashes firing from every direction. If you want to blame someone, he continued, blame me. I built my life on control, on deals, on things I could buy. But for the first time, I met someone who reminded me that love is not a transaction. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. And I was foolish enough to lose her. He left the stage before anyone could ask questions. The headlines changed within hours, not scandal, but confession. Investors called it reckless. The board demanded his resignation. Nicholas did not care. By nightfall, he found himself outside a small hospital on the edge of the city. He had traced Ava's location through the one person she still trusted, her mother's nurse. When he entered the waiting room, Ava was there, sitting alone, her coat still damp from the rain. She looked up, startled. I told you not to come, she said softly. He took a slow breath. I had to. There is nothing left to fix, Nicholas. He stepped closer. I do not want to fix the story. I want to fix us. Her eyes filled with tears. You cannot undo what you said to me. You cannot erase how it felt when everyone pointed at me like I was the villain. You were never the villain, he said, his voice trembling. You were the only honest thing in my entire life. Ava shook her head. You said once that love was not part of the contract. And I was wrong, he whispered. I tore up the contract today, in front of the board, in front of the world. He reached into his pocket and placed the torn papers on the table beside her. This is my grand gesture, Ava. No deals, no conditions, just the truth. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached for the torn papers, her fingertips brushing his. If this is real, you will have to prove it every day, she said quietly. I will, Nicholas promised, for as long as you let me. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, but the rain began to ease. Ava looked up, the first faint trace of a smile forming on her lips. For the first time, she saw not the cold billionaire who bought her future, but the man who had finally learned how to feel. 3 months later, spring returned to New York. The scandal had faded from the news, replaced by newer stories and louder voices. Ava Collins had quietly rebuilt her life, teaching art classes at a small community center downtown. The air inside smelled of paint, coffee, and the kind of peace she had not felt in years. Every so often, she saw his name in passing Nicholas Ward, no longer the CEO of Ward Enterprises. He had stepped down after the press conference, selling his shares and walking away from the empire he once ruled. Some said he vanished. Others said he finally learned what freedom meant. That afternoon, as Ava finished cleaning the brushes, she heard footsteps behind her. A familiar voice spoke softly. You still mix too much blue into your skies. Her heart stopped. She turned, and there he was. No suit, no tie, just Nicholas, standing in the doorway holding a small bouquet of white lilies. I was hoping you would not throw me out, he said. She smiled faintly. You do not have an appointment. I am done with schedules, he replied. I came to give you something back. He placed a small velvet box on the table. Inside was the same ring she had left behind months ago, but the band had been reshaped, engraved with new words inside. No contracts. Only love. Ava looked up at him, tears rising in her eyes. You really walked away from everything? I walked toward something better, Nicholas said. You. He reached for her hand, his voice gentle. I do not expect forgiveness overnight. I just want a chance to build something real. No signatures, no lies, just us. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she slipped the ring onto her finger again, the diamond catching the light of the studio window. This time, she whispered, it feels right. Nicholas smiled, a real one, warm, human, and unguarded. Then let us start over, Ava. No more deals, just one promise. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them. When their lips met, it was not an act, not a contract, not a performance. It was the quiet truth they had both been waiting for. Outside, sunlight spilled through the glass, washing the city in gold. For the first time, neither of them felt owned by anything, not by money, not by fear, not by the past. It had begun as a deal, but it ended as a love story.